And now we move to Canada to listen to Rolly Montpellier.
This is Rolly Montpellier, climate activist, communicator, and blogger. Rolly is a co-founder and editor of Below 2C, a platform to raise awareness and opinion about climate change. He is also a climate ambassador for We Don't Have Time in Canada.
Hello, Rolly. It's great to see you on board here and on the screen. And please give us your keynote presentation.
Yes, it's 2020, and the Paris Agreement has been in place now for 5 years. And we know that to win the fight on against climate change, it's all hands on deck. Now we have to eliminate fossil fuels, and we also have to reduce our emissions. However, emissions continue to rise. They went up 2.7% in 2018, and again kept rising in 2019. There's a growing awareness that the financial sector, particularly the large banks, should be part of the solution. They have a big role to play, and yet they are not part of the solution. They actually have a very large carbon footprint. They are carbon majors, and they are drivers of climate change. The recent report, which is Banking on Climate Change, Fossil Fuel Financing, mentions that the banks are actually aligned with climate disaster, and they make a very strong case. The previous speaker alluded to that. Since Paris, 35 global banks have financed an additional $2.7 trillion in fossils. This is a growing problem, and it's getting worse each year. So the banks right now are fueling the climate crisis. And here in Canada, it's the same thing. Our big banks are really bad for climate. And this is an interesting statistics, which I think all Canadians should be aware of. Canada produces about 5% of the world's oil, and yet, since 2015, has 17.5% of all additional financing in fossils globally. The 5 big banks are in bed with the tar sands, and the tar sands, by the way, one of the world's dirtiest source of dirtiest oil. Our big banks are amongst the top investors with $70 billion additionally since 2015. And regretfully, my own bank, the Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, is the worst fossil bank in Canada and the 5th worst in the world. Now, in an era of climate crisis, this is morally reprehensible. It's unconscionable. And for me, it's unacceptable. And so what I've decided to do is to take action. And if my bank will not divest from fossil fuels, then I'm taking the initiative to actually fire my fossil bank. And I hope that to convince as many Canadians as I can to do that.
Thank you very much, Rolly. Fire your fossil bank. That's a pretty strong motto and slogan there. Thank you very much. Let's move to your colleague Mohan Kumar. He's also in Canada. Let's see his presentation and hear from him.
Meet Mohan Kumar. He previously worked with electric vehicles and carbon pricing projects and is now the lead for the Switch to Fossil-Free Bank campaign at 350 Ottawa.
Hi there. Hi. As you heard, my name is Mohan Kumar, and I'm the lead campaigner for Switch to a Fossil-Free Bank at 350 Ottawa.
Great to have you with us.
No, thank you for having me. As many of you know, 350.org has mostly focused on a divestment with large institutions like universities and local governments. What we wanted to do was try to expand that a little bit, and we wanted to get more individuals involved in the divestment process. And so what we launched was a campaign called the Switch to a Fossil-Free Bank. And the main impetus was the report that Rolly mentioned, which is the Banking on Climate Change report, which outlined the billions of dollars of financing that the big 5 Canadian banks have been providing to fossil fuel projects. And so we wanted to give a tool and encourage individuals to divest their own day-to-day banking from fossil fuels. And so as a part of this campaign, which was launched last September, what we launched was a short video, which is available on our website, on our YouTube channel, which for 350ottawa.org. And so we have a short video, but we also have a web page which outlines some of the evidence that was in the Banking on Climate Change report. We also have a list of alternative financial institutions that individuals can start exploring, and we focus mostly on credit unions. And we have a list of credit unions that are in Ottawa. And at the end of this webpage, we also provide some templates for individuals that they can go in, fill out this template, and this template can be sent to their current banks, telling them why they're switching away from these banks. These banks. In addition, what we also did was we contacted some of the credit unions. We wanted to get their position statement on fossil fuel investments. We heard from one of the largest credit unions, Alterna, which indicated that they're not investing in large fossil fuel projects, and so we've provided some contact information for these credit unions. At this point of the campaign, we're looking into expanding this to include mortgages. We know that mortgages are a big business for the big 5 banks, and they have about 75% of the mortgage market in Canada. And we also know that Canadians pay tens of thousands of dollars in mortgage interest to these banks. So the next phase of this campaign would be to encourage individuals to move their mortgages away from the big 5 banks to credit unions, which offer competitive rates and are member driven. So that's it. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mohan and Rolly, fantastic work you're doing. What has the response been locally in Ottawa, in Canada, and maybe even internationally on your work?
Mohan, take that.
Sure. And so we launched the campaign, as I was saying, in September. And since then, we've had a great response locally. We've had a lot of that web page that I mentioned is one of our most popular web pages. We have had about 1,000 page views. And in addition, we've had people from other parts of Canada approach us in terms of using the templates that we have developed. And so we're going to continue to work on this. It's in the early phases of the campaign, and we hope to get more and more people involved in this.
Katharina, I'd like to add that I'm working closely with Mohan and our 350 Ottawa colleagues. And what I'm specifically working on is writing a letter, of course, to the president and CEO of the Royal Bank. And also we'll do an open letter to bank presidents on my blog site. Additionally, of course, op-eds and letters to the editor, possibly a Facebook group. So we have intentions on ramping it up on 2 fronts. One, switching to a fossil-free bank. And of course, as Mohan was mentioning, certain tools like mortgages and so on. So we're quite optimistic that we will be able to reach a lot of Canadians with our campaign.
People from other countries are viewing. What if they want to do the similar campaign in their community, in their city, in their country? What advice could you share with them?
Well, I think there's a certain reluctance to switch banks at first initially, because it is an undertaking. And one might have the tendency to think, well, I'm only one person, so how can I have any influence? But that's the wrong kind of thinking. I think one person can start the ball rolling. And we all know how one person can make a huge difference. We just have to see what's happening with youth across the world. So I think just sticking to it, adding a plan, being patient, but being driven to move investments away from banks or institutions that will not divest from the fossil fuel industry.
So how can people get more information on the switching from fossil banks? What advice can you give to the individuals?
Well, Mohan was mentioning, of course, that we have a website, and people can certainly contact me at below2c.org. I'm on social media on all the different platforms, and I would be more than happy to share our experience and certainly to provide some guidance or some tools. I think I think I can speak for both Mohan and I that we'd be more happy to have this offline conversation for sure.
Mm-hmm. And you can add your contact information on your organizations in the chat forum on the app, and I mean in the posts there, so people can find you easily. Correct?
We will.
Well, excellent. Thank you for the important work you're doing, and thanks for joining the show.
It's our pleasure, Katerina.
Thank you.